Welcome to Revolutionary War Rarities, the podcast of the Sons of the American Revolution. Like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast in your favorite application. You can also follow our podcast at fastfunhistory.com. For education resources provided by the National Society Sons of the American Revolution, go to education.sar.org. And now, Revolutionary War Rarities.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Season 3 of Revolutionary War Rarities, the podcast from the Sons of the American Revolution. My name is Jim Griffith, and this is...
Zach Distel.
Zach is the curator for the Sons of the American Revolution, located here in Louisville, Kentucky. One of the reasons that we have a curator is because we are going to be opening a museum in the not-too-distant future, which will feature many, many artifacts. It will be an interactive museum, but it will also feature many artifacts of the time of the American Revolution. It will also include a world-class education center, which will be accessible no matter where you are in the world. So we're excited about those things. We're excited to have you with us here today.
Thank you.
So the title of this episode is called Foreign Aid. Now, what you're looking at here on the table is a type of foreign aid. It is foreign supplied weapons, basically,
Right.
and all foreign supplied that helped us to win the American Revolution. So I'm going to throw this over to you. Talk to us about what we're looking at here.
Yeah, we'll go through these things fairly quickly, but, feel free to check out the SAR website. We have more information on there, or, a lot of other partner institutions have more information. But a lot of the foreign aid that came to the revolution actually came in the form of, currency, advice, political capital, things like that. But it's really hard to capture those things in an object. But what we can capture and collect today are, the armaments and the weaponry. So starting down here on the right, this is a Spanish pattern 1753 pistol. These actually represent the first material aid to the revolutionary cause from a foreign government. Even prior to Lexington and Concord, Elbridge Gerry and Jeremiah Lee of Massachusetts were corresponding with the Gardoqui family in Bilbao, Spain, to try to get gunpowder and arms. And 300 muskets and 600 pairs of pistols were on their way to North America even before Lexington and Concord. And those pistols were almost certainly pattern 1753s. Now, this is just a representative example. That is not one of those pistols. But interestingly, Jeremiah Lee did not live to see these pistols arrive because he was in a tavern on the evening of April 18th into April 19th, 1775 in Massachusetts, and had to duck into a cornfield to avoid the British troops making their way to Lexington and Concord, and got sick after that. So he didn't live to see these pistols arrive. But, Spain's not typically one of the combatants that we think about or talk about today supporting the revolution.
Right, unless you're down in what was known as West Florida. Right.
Yeah, down along the Gulf Coast, things like that.
Now, you said 600 pairs of pistols. Do you mean 1,200 pistols?
1,200 individuals. Okay. It's listed, Gardoqui says 600 pairs of pistols.
Okay.
And this was really the only pistol being used in the Spanish army at that time.
Okay.
And, other than the revolutionaries, you would have also found these pistols out on the West Coast, like at the Presidios and, San Diego, San Francisco, places like that. So these pistols are being used, throughout the Spanish Empire in the Americas.
How much does that weigh?
It's pretty heavy. It's about 7 pounds.
Okay.
It's made for being used from horseback.
Sure. Okay.
That's not a marching pistol.
All right. Very good. So we have a Spanish pistol.
Yes.
What do we have here?
So next here, this is a French pattern 1766. Sometimes these are called a 1763/66. They originally released it in 63, quickly realized they had some issues, updated the pattern, re-released them, or reissued them with this barrel band on here. But this is numerically the weapon that France supplied the most numbers of to the Continental Army. 1766 pistols were very good. France had just developed the 1777, so this is last year's model. So they're very happy to be emptying their armories of these older pistols. They're still very serviceable. They were used widely in the Continental Army.
Okay, so we have large donations from the Spanish, large from the French, and large from somebody else.
So the third here, this is a Dutch sea service pistol. This is actually made by a private arms manufacturer, and we are working right now to kind of get to the bottom of this. The hypothesis is that pistols like this were being sent to the revolutionary forces through the island of St. Eustatius in the Caribbean. That was a Dutch island, and so although the Dutch Republic was technically neutral, Dutch arms manufacturers and merchants could make profits up to 400% by trading with the rebellious Americans. So there was a lot of economic incentive, and then they also, supported the revolution to an extent.
So were these given to us, or were they traded? We trade things for those.
They were traded for things like rice, tobacco, indigo.
Okay.
But so the hypothesis is that this particular pistol, or this one right here, was actually used by a member of the Swain family in New England. We're still working to prove that, hoping to find some documentation of it.
Very good. Okay. Last pistol.
Yeah, last pistol down here on the end. To call it foreign aid is maybe a bit cheeky, but this is a British pattern 1759 Elliot light dragoon pistol. These were actually developed during the French and Indian or 7 Years' War in North America. British mounted units realized that the old, large, things that look more like this or like this that are being used on the battlefields of Europe, these are not great for tromping through the woods of Pennsylvania or going over the mountains and traveling long distances.
Right.
So this shorter, more sleek pistol is designed. By the American Revolution, some Americans who had been in the British Army trained with it. And as the war moves south and you have more mounted units, traveling greater distances, the British are using a lot of these. And then there's also American units who are specifically seeking out British units they know that have these to try to capture them to get these cutting edge weapons. And this is, numerically, this is the widest used pistol of the American Revolution between all combatants.
Did foot soldiers carry pistols, or were they mostly carrying muskets?
Foot soldiers almost never carried pistols.
Okay.
There are some Scottish regiments who were allowed to carry pistols, and that was a special cultural touchstone. You had the all-steel Scottish pistols, and those were worn more of a mark of distinction to let everyone know that I am Scottish, although I am serving the British Empire. But you would very rarely find foot soldiers.
So these were officers horseback.
Yeah,
Would carry the pistols.
Yeah, so these are really for officers and especially dragoons. This one is a sea service pistol.
Okay.
Pistols are a great weapon at sea. They're small, but they still pack a punch.
Right. Okay. All right. Do you want to go to the swords next?
Yeah, so we'll move up here. This is I'll actually pick this one up. This is a French hanger or short sword, and we'll get you a better picture of it, but you can see here on the blade, it actually says Grenadier, which is another name for, sometimes that's for actually people who throw grenades. Grenades were used in these types of conflicts. But this sword is probably made in the 1750s, 1760s, so last season's model, a little bit older. France is looking to get rid of some of its older equipment, and if they can make a buck by selling it to the Continental Army, they are happy to do so. But so this is a type of sword that you would often
Now,
see.
if I look at this sword, if you look at the blade itself, the sharpened point of the blade, it does look a little wavy. So that was a used blade, I'm assuming. I mean, I would assume you would.
Yeah.
Sorry to be so graphic, but you would slash and.
Yeah, so this is the type of sword that is being used by a foot soldier or an officer.
Okay.
And so it may have been used in combat. Those might also be marks that were made, during training exercises if you were doing, live sword play.
Right. Okay.
Next here we have, this is actually an American-made sword. These are ones that we believe were made by Jeremiah Snow of Springfield, Massachusetts. He was a silver and goldsmith prior to the Revolution. And the hypothesis is that with the onset of the war, he reapplies his skills to start making these brass hilts, and he also made these cherry wood grips, but he's importing these blades from Spain. This is a 3-fullard, which are these grooves that you see running along the sword. They actually did those because it actually makes the blade stronger.
Really?
Yeah, it makes it stronger and a little bit more flexible.
Okay.
So Jeremiah Snow is importing these blades from Spain and then mounting them, and then these are being issued probably to American units. And this is a cavalry type sword. So you can see compared to this one,
Yep.
it's much longer, and it has a much more pronounced curve to the
Because you were
blade.
using this on a horse.
You're using that from horseback. So they had actually figured out by that time with a curved blade, kind of graphic, but you can impart more energy into
Okay.
what you're hitting with the sword. But that's another example where, you have components coming in from foreign nations that are then being assembled in
Right.
the rebellious colonies.
Foreign aid. And last but not least, this monstrosity here, this thing is huge. How much did this weigh, and where did it come from, and what is it?
So this is a what we would call a French conglomeration musket. So this is not a defined pattern of musket. It weighs, without the bayonet, about 9 pounds.
Okay.
Which is actually, for that time period, that was really, from the French and Indian, the 7 Years' War into the American Revolution, the big goal was to make sure that you have a serviceable musket that weighs less than 10 pounds.
Okay.
So this one with the bayonet, though, you're looking at about 11 pounds, which is a lot to carry when you're on the march. But this particular weapon is actually one of the first 17,000 muskets France supplied to the Continental Army. And this arrived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire on April 20th or 21st, 1777 on the ship Amphitrite. It had been arranged through some back channels, which is another fascinating story. But this is well before the Treaty of Alliance with France that will come later in 1778. The French king and the Spanish king were working behind the scenes, and they were supplying some of these muskets. And what they're doing is they're going into their warehouses and they're pulling out random components for that were left over, and they put them together. So you have like a 1763 barrel with a 1757 lock. Those, I can't remember the exact components for each of these, so don't quote me on those specific numbers. But this is a gun that is just kind of slapdash together, but it's a serviceable musket.
What's the range? What's the accuracy and range? What would a reasonable shot be?
So typically from that period, a well-trained infantryman could hit a target at 50 yards. With good luck, probably at 100 yards, you could still hit a target, but really you're looking at 50 yards.
Speed to reload.
A well-trained soldier could fire a musket like this 3 times a minute.
3 times a minute, which is why the bayonet became very critical.
Yes.
So you would start a battle, 100 yards out?
Yeah, a little bit more than that. The armies would start marching together, and you're going to have cannon fire happening, and that's where you're really trying to soften the enemy, and you're going to have a couple salvos of fire from the muskets. But this right here, the bayonet and swords, that is what the majority of casualties on Revolutionary War battlefields are coming from.
Well, Zach, as always, we appreciate you being here. Thank you for showing us this amazing collection. Once again, for everyone out there, be aware, coming soon is the Sons of the American Revolution Education Center and Museum, located here on Museum Row in Louisville, Kentucky. Right across the street, I don't know if I can say this. I guess I can. We're right across the street from the Louisville Slugger Museum. So the big bat, if you've never been to downtown Louisville, just look for the big bat on the side of the museum, and then come directly across the street and you'll hit the Sons of the American Revolution.
You got us.
One of the things, Zach, that I think about when I look at this is Teddy Roosevelt said, speak softly and carry a big stick. Man, were there some sizable sticks that we carried. Just the weight and the size of these things is amazing.
Yeah.
Having to haul those things. Once again, always refer back to the marching soldiers averaging, what I have heard, was 16.1 miles per day of marching, according to the Journal of the American Revolution, during the American Revolutionary War. 16.1 miles carrying weapons of this size. And that's not all you're carrying.
Yeah. Plus your pack, canteens, ammunition.
Right. It's amazing. It's amazing what we accomplished. Friends, that is another Revolutionary War Rarity. We thank you for being with us today. Please remember and join us again in 2 weeks for the next episode of Revolutionary War Rarities, the podcast from the Sons of the American Revolution. My name is Jim Griffith.
Zach Distel.
And Zach Distel. We thank you for being with us again. This has been a production of the National Society Sons of the American Revolution, www.sar.org.